Hey guys, tonight we are diving headfirst into the cobblestone streets of 12th century Paris. But you're not just a tourist. No, you're the main event. You're the intellectual heartthrob, the philosophical rock star of the medieval world, a man named Peter Abelard. Honestly, given what's coming, you might wish you were just a tourist. You might wish you were just a tourist. Fame, forbidden love, and a fall from grace so spectacular, it's still being talked about 9 centuries later. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, I'd love to see where you're tuning in from. Drop your city and the time in the comments below. It's always cool to see how this little community spans the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is 1115th. You wake up not to an alarm, but to the distant, rhythmic chiming of cathedral bells across the Ile de Lossite, the island heart of Paris. Your room is small, cold, and smells of wood smoke, old parchment, and the faint, sweet scent of beeswax from last night's candle. You stretch, the coarse wool of your tunic scratching against your skin. This is the life you chose. This is the life you dominate. You are Peter Abelard, and you are, without a doubt, the smartest man in Paris, and you know it. Walking out into the morning air, the city is a chaotic symphony. It's not the grand, stone-paved Paris you might picture. The streets are narrow, muddy, uncrowded, merchants are shouting their wares, dogs are barking, and everywhere, absolutely everywhere, there are students. Young men from all over Europe, huddled in doorways, arguing passionately in heavily accented Latin about the nature of reality. They're here for one reason. Your lecture hall for the day isn't some grand university building. That concept is still a bit fuzzy. The University of Paris isn't a place yet, it's a guild, a community of masters and scholars. So, a fun little fact for you, you lecture wherever you can rent a room big enough to hold the crowd. Sometimes it's the cloister of a church, sometimes a dusty upper floor of a tavern. It's a very indie band on tour vibe, if the band only played philosophical deep cuts. Today, the room is packed. Students are sitting on the floor, perched on windowsills, spilling out into the hallway. The air is thick with anticipation. You walk to the simple wooden lectern at the front, and a hush falls over the crowd. You don't need to shout. Your presence is enough. You are known for your devastating logic, your sharp wit, and a certain theatrical flair. While other masters drone on, reading from dusty old texts, you turn learning into a blood store. Your method is revolutionary, something you call sick at non yes and no. You take a controversial question, like is faith a matter of reason or a gift from God, and you present every argument for, and every argument against, citing church fathers, anyone you can think of. You pit them against each other, exposing contradictions, tearing down weak logic, until only the most resilient truth remains. It's thrilling, it's dangerous. You look out at the sea of faces. Young, eager, a little bit feral, they hang on your every word. You see them scribbling furiously on wax tablets, trying to capture your lightning-fast syllogism. You see the way they look at you with an admiration that borders on worship. You are not just their teacher, you are their champion. You've taken on the most established meisters in Paris, and in public debate, you've intellectually dismantled them. You've made them look foolish, and in doing so, you've become a hero to this new generation of thinkers. But here's something historians still quietly debate: are you truly a revolutionary, a man ahead of his time ushering in an age of reason, or are you just an incredibly charismatic and ambitious man with a genius for debate and self-promotion? You, of course, have no such doubts. As you demolish a classic theological argument with a wry smile, you feel the familiar surge of victory. It's a heady feeling, more potent than any wine. This intellectual battlefield is your kingdom. After the lecture, you're mobbed. Students press in, asking questions, seeking clarification, or just wanting to be near you. You handle them with practiced ease, a sharp answer here, a dismissive joke there. You are the center of this universe. Your reputation precedes you across the continent. Letters arrive daily from scholars in Italy, in the German lands in England, all wanting to engage with the mind of Abelard. As you finally make your way back to your modest lodgings, alone, the roar of the crowd fades. You light a single candle and look at your hands. They are scholars' hands now, stained with ink. But they weren't always meant to be. You think back to what you gave up for this life of the mind, for the intoxicating applause of the lecture hall. You remember the weight of a sword, the feel of a horse beneath you, the path of a night that was laid out for you at birth. A path you deliberately, and to the fury of your family, turned your back on. The flickering candlelight throws long, dancing shadows on the wall. Your mind drifts away from the adoring crowds of Paris back to the windswept coast of Brittany, to the stone fortress of La Palette where you were born. It feels like another world, another life. You are the eldest son of the knight Berengar, a man whose hands work Alice from the sword hilt, not the pen. Your destiny was as solid and unyielding as the castle walls. You would inherit the land, the title, the sword, and the duties that came with them. You can still feel the memory in your bones. The damp chill of the armory, the metallic tang of polished steel. Your younger brothers, Dagobert training with a natural, almost brutish enthusiasm. The clash of practiced swords was the music of your childhood. You, however, were always different. While they were in the training yard, sweating and shouting, you were often found in the small chapel, pestering the old priest, not about salvation, but about the logic in his Latin texts. You were fascinated by the architecture of an argument, the way words could be used to build fortresses more impregnable than stone. Your father, a good and honorable man, was perpetually confused by you. He would watch you, his heir, hunched over a wax tablet, arguing with yourself about the properties of a universal concept, and he would just shake his head. He tried. He put a sword in your hand, a heavy, clumsy thing. You learned the basics, how not to chop your own foot off. You learned to ride a horse without falling. But your heart wasn't in it. Your passion was for a different kind of combat. You saw that a well-placed question could disarm a man more effectively than a lance. The day you made your choice is seared into your memory. You stood before your father in the great hall, the family banners hanging sign above. You were a young man, but you felt ancient. You formally renounced your birthright. You gave up the lands, the titles, the entire future that had been planned for you since your first breath. You ceded it all to Dagobert. You were trading a lordship for a life of wandering scholarship. To say your father was furious would be an understatement. He was heartbroken. He saw it as a betrayal, an insult to your lineage. To him, you were throwing away substance for shadow. But without the safety and structure of a monastery, you were choosing to be a thinker for hire, a master without a parish, which was a deeply strange and unstable path for a nobleman's son. It was seen as a step down, a willful descent into a world of intellectual vagrants. Historians still argue about the true nature of this decision. Was it a pure philosophical calling, a soul so dedicated to logic that it couldn't bear the confines of a feudal life? Or was it the ultimate act of a rebellious son, a young man with a fierce and competitive intellect, finding a new arena in which to dominate, a world his father couldn't understand and his brothers couldn't enter? Maybe you sensed you could never be the best knight, but you knew, you just knew, you could be the best thinker. You chose Mars, the god of war, but you would worship him in the lecture halls of Minerva, the goddess of wisdom. You left the pallet with nothing but the clothes on your back and a mind that was already becoming a legend. You walked into the world not as a lord, but as a dialectician, a professional arguer. And you were right. You conquered Paris. You defeated your rivals in public debates that became the talk of the town. You, the man who gave up his sword, wielded logic like a rapier, parrying arguments, finding weaknesses, and delivering devastating conclusions that left your opponents intellectually slain. You built your own kingdom, not of land and stone, but of ideas and followers. A faint smile touches your lips there in your lonely room. You look at your ink-stained fingers again. Yes, you made the right choice. The thrill of victory in the lecture hall today was just as potent, just as real, as any victory on a battlefield. You are a different kind of warrior, a new kind of celebrity. You are the master of your own destiny, beholden to no one. You are untouchable, at least that's what you believe. And in this moment of quiet pride, you have no idea that the greatest battle of your life has nothing to do with theology or logic. It's a battle that will be waged in the heart, and it's one you are utterly unprepared for. It begins, as so many things do, with a name whispered on the streets of Paris. The name reaches you not in a lecture hall or a dusty library, but in the casual conversations that fill the air after your public debates. It's spoken with a unique mixture of admiration and wonder. The name is Héloïse. At first you don't pay much attention. You're a man who deals in universals, in grand philosophical concepts. The gossip of the city is just background noise. But the name keeps cropping up. You hear it from your own students, who speak of her as if she were a marvel of nature, a unicorn sighted in the crowded streets of Paris. You hear it from other masters, your rivals, who mention her with a tone of grudging respect they rarely afford even to each other. Who is this Héloïse? You start to piece together the story from the fragments you overhear. She is the niece of a certain canon of the Cathedral of Notre Dame, a man named Peter Abelard. A canon is a clergyman, a respectable position, but not one of enormous power. He raised her himself, and recognizing her prodigious intellect from a young age, he did something highly unusual for the time. He provided her with an education equal to, and by all accounts, surpassing that of any young man. This is where the story becomes truly remarkable. In an age when most women, even noble women, were taught little more than domestic skills and perhaps enough literacy to read a prayer book, Héloïse was reading the classics, in their original languages. While you and your students are wrestling with Latin translations of Aristotle, she is reportedly reading him and Plato in the original Greek. She knows Hebrew as well, a skill almost unheard of outside of Jewish scholarly circles. She doesn't just read, she understands. She writes letters, you hear, to scholars across Europe, discussing complex points of theology and philosophy with a clarity and insight that leaves them astounded. She is not just educated, she is brilliant. A prodigy, a mind to rival any in Paris. And that, of course, includes you. A flicker of professional curiosity, maybe even a hint of intellectual rivalry, sparks within you. You, Peter Abelard, are the undisputed king of dialectic in this city. The idea of another mind, a female mind at that, commanding such respect is intriguing. It's also a little bit threatening to the natural order of things, which only makes it more fascinating. You begin to imagine her. What does a woman who reads Greek for pleasure look like? Is she a dried-up, bookish creature, pale from a life indoors, or is there a fire to match the intellect? The reports are maddeningly vague on this point. They speak of her mind, her wisdom, her learning. Her appearance is secondary, a footnote to her genius. But the mystery only fuels your curiosity. She is a living, breathing philosophical puzzle right in the heart of your city. Here's a small but important detail about 12th century life. Public and private spheres were not as distinct as they are today. A prominent scholar like you and a talked about intellectual like her, living in the same small, dense city center, would have been aware of each other's reputations long before you ever met. The world of letters a small club, and she was its most exclusive and mysterious new member. The more you hear, the more a plan begins to form in your mind. It's a subtle, almost subconscious thought at first. You conquered every intellectual opponent in Paris. You've bested the old masters, won the adoration of the students. What is the next challenge? The idea of meeting this woman, of testing her mind against your own, is an exhilarating prospect. But how the social conventions are rigid. You can't simply knock on Canon Nephew Albert's door and ask to have a philosophical debate with his niece. A woman of her standing, especially one so young and unmarried, is carefully cloistered. Access is restricted. This is where your reputation becomes your key. You are not just any scholar. You are the scholar, the most famous teacher in France. If anyone could be granted access to such a prodigy, it would be you. The idea starts to take shape not as a personal desire, but as a professional necessity. It would be a meeting of the minds. A noble, purely intellectual endeavor. At least, that's the story you tell yourself. Historians, of course, have spent centuries debating this very moment. What was your primary motivation? Was it the pure, academic desire to engage with a brilliant peer, or was there already a seed of something else, a flicker of pride, wanting to see if this famed intellect could truly hold a candle to your own, or perhaps even a baser, more human curiosity, piqued by the legend of a woman who was as intelligent as she was unavailable? The truth, as is often the case, is likely a tangled mess of all three. For now, she's just a name, a concept, the wise woman of Paris. You file the name away, a problem to be solved, an opportunity waiting to be seized. As you drift off to sleep, the chiming of the cathedral bells seems to be tolling a new kind of challenge, one not of logic, but of life itself. The opportunity you were waiting for arrives in the form of a man. Can a nephew Albert? You arrange a meeting. It's not difficult in the tight-knit ecclesiastical and academic world of Paris. Everyone knows everyone. Nephew Albert is a respectable, middle-aged clergyman, a canon of the Notre Dame Cathedral. HES, a man of some standing, but HES, not a major player. His entire world, his pride, his life's project, is his niece. You meet him in the cool, echoing cloister of the cathedral. Sunlight streams through the high arched windows, illuminating dancing dust motes in the air. He is exactly as you pictured him, earnest, a little fussy, unradiating and almost suffocating pride. He speaks of Héloïse not as a person, but as a masterpiece he has curated. He boasts of her fluency in Greek, her mastery of Latin prose, her sharp theological insight. He recites compliments paid to her by other scholars as if they were his own military victories. You listen patiently, nodding in all the right places. You are a master of rhetoric, and that includes the art of flattery. You praise his foresight, his dedication. You commend him for investing so heavily in her education, calling it a service to God and to knowledge itself. He swells with pride, preening under the attention of the great Peter Abelard. He is, you realize, an easy man to read. His love for his niece is genuine, but it's hopelessly entangled with his own ambition. Her fame is his fame. Her success is his legacy. And in that ambition, you see your opening. You observe him carefully. He's a man who loves the idea of knowledge but is not, you suspect, a truly profound thinker himself. HES more of a collector, a guardian of a treasure he doesn't fully comprehend. He knows his niece is brilliant, but he likely feels inadequate, unable to guide her intellectual journey any further. He has taken her as far as he can. Now, he needs a new, more prestigious tutor to continue the work, to add more luster to his prized possession. Here's a little tidbit about the medieval church that's quite interesting. While the clergy were, in theory, celibate and detached from worldly family life, this wasn't always the reality. Many canons and even bishops had nieces and nephews living with them, who were, in many cases, their own unaccompanied children. Historians still debate the precise nature of Nephew Albert's relationship to Héloïse. Was he truly her uncle, or was he her father, trying to give his illegitimate daughter the best possible life under the restrictive social codes of the time? The sources are silent on this, calling him her unc maternal uncle. But the sheer intensity of his devotion and later has led many to speculate that the bond was much closer. You, in that moment, don't care about the biology. You only care about the psychology. You see his vanity, his desire for reflected glory, and you decide to play on it. You steer the conversation from her past achievements to her future. A mind like that, you say, your voice resonating with scholarly authority, is a garden that requires constant, expert tending, lest the weeds of lesser thoughts take root. You watch his face. HES hook. You then begin to lament your own situation, a subtle but masterful complaint. You speak of the burdens of your fame, the lectures, the debates, the endless administrative squabbles of the schools. They leave you no time for your own studies, and your lodgings, you sigh, are so noisy, so public. It's impossible to get any serious work done. You paint a picture of a great mind hampered by petty practicalities. Nephew Albert listens, his expression shifting from pride to sympathy. He sees you not as the celebrity scholar, but as a fellow intellectual struggling against the world. He feels a kinship. The trap is set. Now you just need to spring it. You look him in the eye, as if a brilliant idea has just struck you. You know, Canon. You begin leaning in conspiratorially, we may be able to solve each other's problems. The air in the cloister seems to grow still. Héloïse leans forward, his eyes wide. H.E.S. No fool he knows an association with you would elevate his and Héloïse's status immeasurably. To have Peter Abelard living under his own roof at Saku, he could only have dreamed of. It would make his house the most talked about intellectual salon in the city. The glory would be intoxicating. He sees the social and academic triumph. What his simple, proud mind is utterly incapable of imagining is the human element. He sees a meeting of two great minds. He doesn't see a meeting of a man and a woman, and in that fatal blind spot, your entire plan rests. A mutually beneficial arrangement, you propose, your tone casual, as if the idea were a trivial matter of convenience. I am looking for quiet lodgings where I can focus on my own philosophical work, away from the clamor of my students. You, in turn, are looking for a master to continue your niece's extraordinary education. You let the proposal hang in the air between you and Héloïse, a perfect, shimmering jewel of an idea. You can almost see the gears turning in his head. On one hand, lodgings and board for the most famous master in Paris. On the other, private, daily tutelage for his beloved niece from that very same master. It's a transaction so heavily weighted in his favor, he can barely believe his lot. I would, of course, pay you for my room and board, you add, a gesture of magnanimity that costs you little but seals the deal. And in return for this quiet sanctuary, I would be more than happy to devote my spare hours to instructing Mademoiselle Héloïse. No fee, naturally, it would be my honor. Héloïse's face is a study in barely contained glee. He tries to maintain a facade of solemn consideration, but his eyes are shining. He stammers his acceptance, assuring you that his home is your home, but it would be the highest honor of his life. He is so blinded by the prestige, so focused on the intellectual status this will bring him, that he misses the obvious. He is about to invite a wolf into the sheepfold, and H.E.S. holding the door open himself. Your plan is audacious, almost laughably so. You are a man in your late 30s, at the peak of your fame and intellectual power. You are not some doddering old scholar. You are a celebrity, known for your charisma and forceful personality. And you are proposing to move in with a young, brilliant, and reportedly beautiful woman for the purpose of private instruction. From a modern perspective, the alarm bells would be deafening. But here's a quirky little detail about the period: the idea of a tutor had a slightly different, more formal connotation. It was often an older clergyman, and the instruction was meant to be rigorous and entirely impersonal. The relationship was supposed to be one of master and disciple, utterly devoid of any personal connection. Héloïse in his vanity, he sees you not as a man, but as a mind. He trusts in the power of social convention and clerical status to keep everything in its proper, sterile place. A catastrophic miscalculation. Historians have long debated the extent of your premeditation. In your later writings, in your great autobiographical work Historia Calamitatum, the story of my misfortunes, you admit that your motives were far from pure. You confess that you had heard of her beauty as well as her mind, and that you consciously and deliberately plotted to seduce her. Was this a truthful confession, or the exaggerated self-loathing of a man looking back on his downfall, or perhaps was it a bit of a boast, even in ruin, the idea that you, the great logician, could orchestrate not just a philosophical debate, but a romantic conquest with such strategic precision? Whatever the internal mix of motives, the external plan works perfectly. Within a week you have moved your few belongings, mostly books and writing materials, into Canon Héloïse's house on the Ile de los site, not far from the rising stones of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Your room is simple, but as promised, it is quiet. Héloïse treats you with a reverence that borders on comical. He fusses over your meals, ensures you are never disturbed, and constantly reminds his household staff that they are in the presence of genius. He has effectively made you the master of his home. And then he grants you the final, crucial piece of your plan. He not only gives you permission to tutor Héloïse, he gives you authority over her. He says to you, his voice full of avuncular pride, I deliver her to you entirely to be taught. And if you should find her disobedient or lazy in her studies, it was a common enough sentiment for tutors of young boys, but shocking when applied to his prized niece. He is so eager to see her learn from you that he gives you complete control. He trusts you, absolutely. You now have everything you wanted: proximity, privacy, authority. The stage is set. All that remains is to finally meet the woman whose reputation has captivated the city and ensnared your own imagination. You wait for the moment of your first lesson, a sense of profound, thrilling anticipation coursing through you. The greatest logician in Europe has just executed a flawless plan. The only variable left is the human heart. And you, a man who has dedicated his life to the certainties of reason, have no idea how unpredictable that variable can be. The day of the first lesson arrives. You walk into the small library of FULBRT's house, a room fragrant with the scent of aging leather and parchment. Sunlight from a high, narrow window cuts a bright slash across the dusty air. And there she is. She stands to greet you, and for a moment, the sharp analytical mind of Peter Abelard goes completely silent. The rumors, the whispers, the stories you've heard, none of them did her justice. She is younger than you expected, perhaps not yet 20, but it's not her youth that strikes you. It's the unsettling, profound intelligence in her eyes. They are clear and direct, and they meet yours without the slightest hint of girlish deference or shyness. She looks at you as an equal. The tales of her learning were true. The tales of her beauty were an understatement. You are, for a moment, thrown completely off balance. You came here with a plan, a predator's strategy. You expected to be the one in control, the master dazzling the student. But as you look at her, you feel an unexpected jolt of something. Respect, you clear your throat, re-smelling the persona of the great teacher. Her voice, when she speaks, is low and steady. I have a fondness for truth, Master Abelard. The classics are merely one path to finding it. And just like that, the game has changed. This is not a fawning student. This is a sparring partner. You begin the lesson. You open a book, a text by the Roman philosopher Boethius. You chose it deliberately. It's complex, dense with Neoplatonic thought, a text that challenges even your most advanced students. You begin to expound on a particularly thorny passage, your voice falling into its familiar lecture hall rhythm, laying out the standard interpretation. You expect her to listen, to take notes, to absorb your wisdom. She does not. She listens intently, her head tilted slightly. When you finish, there is a moment of silence. Then, she raises a single, elegant finger. "What, master?" she says, her tone one of genuine intellectual curiosity. Does Boethius not contradict himself in the 3rd chapter? When he argues for the nature of divine fork and wold, if God knows all that will happen, as Boethius claims, how can man truly possess free will? Is not our every choice merely an echo of a script already written? You stop. It's a classic theological paradox, the very kind of sic et non question you love. But to have it thrown back at you, so concisely, so confidently, by this young woman on your very first meeting is stunning. She hasn't just read the book, she has interrogated it. She has found its weaknesses. A slow smile spreads across your face. This is better than you could have possibly imagined. The thrill you feel is not that of a predator closing in on its prey, but of a warrior who has finally met a worthy opponent. The lesson transforms. It ceases to be a lecture and becomes a dialogue, a debate. You argue a point, she counters with a citation from Augustine. She posits a theory, you challenge it with a line from Plato. The hours fly by. The sunbeam crawling across the floor marks the passage of time. You forget your plan. You forget you are Peter Abelard, the famous master. You are simply a mind, joyfully engaged with another. Here's a curious little detail of medieval scholarship: debate was everything. It wasn't about finding a single correct answer, but about the process of argumentation itself. The ability to defend a position, attack an opponent's logic, and marshal evidence from authoritative texts was the highest form of intellectual expression. And in this small, sunlit room, you are engaged in the highest form of that art. The pretense of your seduction plot feels clumsy and foolish in the face of this reality. How can you trick a mind that is as sharp, if not sharper, than your own? You realize that your original plan, To overwhelm her with your intellect is a non-starter. You cannot conquer this mind. You can only meet it. As the lesson finally concludes, you feel a sense of exhilaration you haven't felt in years. It's different from the public adoration of your students. That was about ego, about performance. This is different. This is a connection. You look at her, really look at her, as she gathers her books. You see the flush of excitement on her cheeks, the fire in her eyes. She too has felt it, the spark, the meeting of two minds so perfectly attuned that the rest of the world fades away. Historians and literary scholars have long debated what truly happened in those first lessons. Was it a purely intellectual affair that slowly, unexpectedly, blossomed into love, or was the intellectual fireworks merely the tinder for a passion that was waiting to be lit? You, in your later confession, would claim it was all part of the plan. But memory is a treacherous thing, especially a memory burnished by guilt and tragedy. Looking back, it's easy to impose a simple narrative on a complex, messy, and beautiful reality. As you leave the library, you know one thing for certain. Your perfectly logical, perfectly controlled world has just been irrevocably complicated. The plan to seduce Héloïse is dead. In its place is something far more dangerous and far more real: a desperate, undeniable desire to simply be near her, to hear her speak, to lose yourself in the labyrinth of her mind. The lessons continue, day after day. The pretense of a formal tutelage dissolves almost immediately. The sessions become the anchor of your life, the still point in the turning world of your fame. The books lie open between you, but more often than not, they are forgotten. Your heads lean closer together, not to read the text, but to hear each other's whispers. The subject matter strays far from both ears. You talk about everything. You debate the existence of universals, and then, in the next breath, you find yourself sharing stories from your childhood, your world of stone castles and swords, her world of cloistered study and quiet rebellion. The line between philosophy and confession blurs until it disappears entirely. You discover her wit, a dry, sharp humor that perfectly complements your own. You make her laugh, a sound that feels more rewarding than the applause of 100 students. She, in turn, challenges your intellectual arrogance with a gentle but unyielding logic that you find both infuriating and intoxicating. For the first time in your life, you have found someone who is not impressed by your reputation. She is only interested in your mind and in the man behind it. Your hands touch, accidentally, as you both reach for the same book. A current passes between you, more potent than any syllogism. The air in the library grows thick with unspoken words. The intellectual connection, so pure and so powerful, has created the perfect vessel for a physical one. Love, you realize, is not so different from philosophy. It is a dialogue, a search for truth, a passionate argument that you hope never ends. One evening, after a particularly intense debate about the nature of the soul, you look at her across the candlelit table. The city outside is silent. Albert is asleep. The entire world seems to have shrunk to this single, sacred space. The argument is over, but the energy of it still crackles between you. You don't plan it. There is no strategy. You simply stand, walk around the table, and gently tilt her chin up with your hand. The look in her eyes is not one of surprise, but of recognition, of arrival. The kiss is not a conquest, but a surrender. It is the logical conclusion to an argument that your hearts had been making for weeks. In that moment, everything you thought you knew about yourself shatters. You, Peter Abelard, the master of reason, the man who renounced the world of the flesh for the world of the mind, are completely undone by a touch. Your ambition, your fame, your carefully constructed intellectual kingdom, it all feels like a pale imitation of this one perfect, terrifying moment of connection. Your love affair begins in secret, a fragile flame cupped in the hands of stolen moments. You become conspirators. Philbert's rust is your cloak of invisibility. He sees you poring over books with his niece and swells with pride, never imagining that the texts are just props. He hears the murmur of your voices from the library and smiles, thinking of the great philosophical truths being debated, never guessing the language you speak is love. Here's a little detail of medieval city life that made your affair possible. There was no electric lighting. Night was truly deeply dark. Once F.U. Albert retired for the evening, the house was yours. The darkness was your accomplice, allowing you to move between rooms, to find each other in the shadows. Your world becomes nocturnal. You live for the moment the house falls silent and you can finally be together. The library, once a room of intellectual sparring, becomes your sanctuary. You make love surrounded by the works of the great philosophers, a fact that appeals to your sense of poetic irony. You, who had preached that the pursuit of wisdom required a detachment from earthly passions, are now proving that the two are inextricably, wonderfully linked. Passion, you discover, fuels the mind just as the mind fuels passion. Historians, of course, can only speculate on the details of these moments, piecing them together from the passionate, and often regretful, letters you would exchange years later. There is a tendency to view your affair through the lens of the tragedy to come, to see it as a reckless mistake. But that is to do it a disservice. In these stolen hours, you are not tragic figures. You are two people who have found, against all odds, their other half. Your connection is total intellectual, emotional, and physical. You are, for the first time in your life, truly, incandescently happy. But it's a fragile, dangerous happiness. You are living a lie under the roof of the one man who trusts you implicitly. You are playing with fire in a house made of dry parchment. And the smoke is already beginning to seep out from under the door. You are so lost in your private world, so convinced of your own cleverness, that you don't notice the signs that your perfect secret is about to unravel. Your intellectual output grinds to a halt. The complex theological treatises, the sharp philosophical critiques that had defined your career, the wellspring of your inspiration has run dry. Or rather, it has been diverted. All the creative energy that you once poured into dissecting the arguments of long-dead philosophers is now channeled into a single, all-consuming project, Héloïse. You still go to the lecture halls. You still debate. You go through the motions of being Peter Abelard, the academic superstar, but your heart isn't in it. Your mind is elsewhere, back in the quiet library, reliving a shared glance, a whispered joke, the touch of a hand. Your students notice a change. The fierce, combative edge is slightly dulled. There's a new softness in you, a distraction they can't quite name, but your creativity hasn't vanished, it has simply changed its form. Instead of writing syllogism, you find yourself writing songs. You, the master of logic, become a troubadour of the heart. You compose melodies and write lyrics, not in the formal, scholarly Latin of your books, but in the vernacular French spoken on the streets. They are love songs, passionate and yearning, filled with clever wordplay and aching sincerity. They are, by all accounts, incredibly good. You were always a performer, and now you have found a new stage. This is a fascinating little side note to your story that often gets overlooked. Peter Abelard, one of the founders of Scholasticist, was also a pop star. The songs you wrote became immensely popular. They were catchy. They were relatable. Students hummed them in the taverns. Ladies of the court had them sung by minstrels. Your melodies drifted out of windows and echoed in the narrow, muddy streets of Paris. You are the secret author of the city's soundtrack, and everyone is singing about your love life. They just don't know it. The songs speak of a brilliant, unattainable lady, a love that is both a sublime joy and a sweet agony. The lyrics are just vague enough to be universal, but for you and Héloïse, they are a secret diary set to music. Every line is a shared memory, every chorus a private vow. In the library, you sing them for her, your voice soft in the candlelit intimacy. It's a game you both enjoy, this public secret. You watch her face as you sing a line that references a specific conversation, a particular book you read together, and you see the smile she tries to hide. It's your own private language broadcast to the entire world. This period of your life leads to an interesting, and still debated, academic question: just how many of the anonymous love lyrics from this era were actually written by you? We know from your own writings and from others that you were a famous soul-writer, but most of your compositions are lost. Scholars pore over surviving manuscripts from the 12th century, looking for traces of your unique style, your blend of intellectual wordplay and raw emotion. Was that one anonymous ballad you? What about that one you left behind, a kind of phantom discography, a ghost in the medieval musical machine? Your affair is all-consuming. Your studies are neglected, your lectures are uninspired, but your love is flourishing. You are so caught up in the rapture of it, so insulated in your secret world, that you become careless. The arrogance that served you so well in the lecture hall becomes your undoing in the game of love. You believe you are too clever to be caught. Abelard, in his trusting blindness, still sees nothing. He sees you pale and distracted and assumes you are working too hard on your philosophical masterpieces. He probably boasts to his friends that the great Abelard is in the throes of a major intellectual breakthrough under his very roof. The irony is almost painful. But others are not so blind. The servants in the house, perhaps they see the lingering glances, the doors that are closed when they should be open. Or maybe your students, who notice that the name Héloïse, once a symbol of abstract female genius, is now a name you never, ever mention, a silence that is more revealing than any word. Love makes you bold, but it also makes you stupid. You have built your reputation on being the smartest man in Paris, a man who sees every angle, every logical possibility. But you are blind to the most obvious of truths. A fire this bright cannot be hidden for long. It casts a glow that can be seen from miles away. The whispers are starting. The city that sang your songs is beginning to guess the name of your muse. And the one person you have so profoundly deceived, the proud and trusting Abelard, will inevitably be the last to know. The discovery, when it comes, is not a single dramatic moment of confrontation. It's a slow, sickening dawning. 1,000 tiny suspicions, once easily dismissed, begin to coalesce into an undeniable and monstrous truth. Perhaps it's a servant's gossip that finally reaches Abelard's ears. Or maybe a fellow canon with a hint of malicious glee asks him a question that is just a little too pointed about the nature of the studies happening in his home. Or maybe, and this is the most likely scenario, he simply starts to pay attention. He starts to truly see what has been happening in front of him all along. He sees the way you look at Héloïse when you think no one is watching. It's not the look of a teacher examining a pupil. It's the look of a man utterly besotted. He notices the books on the library table, untouched for days. He hears the music, the soft singing, the laughter that comes from behind the closed-door sounds that have nothing to do with the rigors of Aristotelian logic. The man who trusted you implicitly, who saw you as the embodiment of intellectual purity, is forced to see you as what you are, a man. And he is forced to see his niece, his creation, his perfect prodigy, not as a vessel of divine wisdom, but as a woman in love. His reaction is not quiet. It is not subtle. It is a volcanic eruption of fury. The love he had for his niece, so possessive and intertwined with his own ego, coalesced into a venomous rage. The reverence he had for you, the great master Abelard, transforms into a profound and personal hatred. He has been deceived in his own home, made a fool of in the eyes of the world. His pride, the very foundation of his being, has been shattered. One day you are confronted. He bursts into the library, his face purple with rage, his voice trembling. He doesn't need proof the truth is radiating from you both like heat. He hurls accusations at you. His words a torrent of betrayal and disgust. He calls you a hypocrite, a defiler, a snake he welcomed into his home. You, the master of debate, are speechless. There is no argument to be made, no logical position to defend. You are guilty. Utterly and completely. Héloïse tries to intervene, to reason with him, but he doesn't even look at her. In his eyes, she is no longer his brilliant niece, she is a fallen woman, a spoiled treasure. His anger is focused entirely on you, the man who engineered this downfall. He throws you out of the house. You are cast out from your sanctuary, separated from Héloïse. The separation is a physical agony. The city that was once your kingdom now feels like a prison. Every street corner reminds you of her. Every love song you hear drifting from a tavern window is a bitter echo of what you've lost. This forced separation, however, does not end your affair. It only makes it more desperate. Passion thrives on obstacles. You find ways to communicate, smuggling letters through servants, arranging brief, frantic meetings in secret. The danger only heightens the intensity. And here's a sad, little detail that highlights Abelard's state of mind. His primary concern wasn't just the moral transgression. It was the damage to his reputation. In his world, honor and public perception were everything. You hadn't just broken his trust, you had made him a cuckold in spirit, a laughingstock. The academic community of Paris was a gossip mill, and he knew that the story of his niece and her famous tutor would provide grist for months. His rage was fueled by this profound public humiliation. Historians often wonder why Fulbert's reaction was so extreme. Many men of the cloth had discreet relationships, and while Anis's affair was a scandal, his level of fury seemed to border on unhinged. This is where the theory that Héloïse was actually his daughter gains much of its power. The betrayal would feel infinitely deeper, the shame more personal, if it was his own child you had corrupted. The historical sources are ambiguous, leaving us to guess at the true source of his all-consuming rage. Was it the pride of an uncle, the shame of a father, or the fury of a man who felt his entire life's work had been desecrated? You are miserable. The joy has been drained from your life, replaced by a constant, gnawing anxiety and a deep, aching longing. You try to focus on your work, but it's impossible. You are living in a state of suspension, waiting for the next stolen moment, the next whispered message. You believe this is the worst it can get. You believe that the pain of separation and the heat of Fulbert's anger is the peak of your suffering. You are wrong. The affair has already set in motion a chain of events, a biological reality that cannot be stopped by anger or separation or social shame. Your secret love is about to become very, very public. In the midst of the chaos, the secret meetings, the smuggled letters, the constant fear of Fulbert's wrath, Héloïse sends you a message. It is not a note of yearning or a plan for a rendezvous. It is a piece of news that changes everything, that elevates your secret affair from a personal scandal to an uncontainable crisis. She is pregnant. The words on the parchment seem to vibrate with a terrifying power. A child. A living, breathing consequence of your stolen nights in the library. Your love, which had felt so private, so contained within your secret world, is about to burst forth into reality. It will have a face, a name, an undeniable presence. Héloïse's letter is not one of panic. In fact, you were struck by the tone. She writes, you would later recall, with a kind of triumphant joy. For her, this child is not a disaster. It is the ultimate expression of your love, a physical manifestation of your union of souls. She is not ashamed. You, however, are terrified. Your mind, the logical, strategic mind of Peter Abelard, races through the implications. A child. An illegitimate child. For you, a cleric, even a secular one, this is professional suicide. It's one thing to have a discreet affair, many did, but to father a child out of wedlock is a public, undeniable sin. It will destroy your career, tarnish your reputation beyond repair, and give your many academic enemies the ultimate weapon to use against you. And for Héloïse, the consequences are even more dire. For a woman in the 12th century, an illegitimate child is a social death sentence. It will ruin her marriage prospects, stain her family's honor, and cast a permanent shadow over her life. She will be labeled a fallen woman, an object of pity and scorn. The brilliant mind that scholars across Europe admired will be overshadowed by the scandal of her body. This is where you and Héloïse fundamentally differ. She sees the child as a symbol of your love, a truth to be embraced. You see it as a problem to be managed, a catastrophe to be contained. Her reaction is of the heart, yours is of the head, and of the ego. Here's a small but poignant detail about pregnancy. In the Middle Ages, it was incredibly dangerous. Childbirth was a life-threatening event for both mother and infant. There was no prenatal care, no understanding of germs or proper medical procedures. When Héloïse tells you she is pregnant, she is not just announcing a social crisis, she is announcing that she is about to embark on a perilous physical journey. Your fear for your career is matched by a very real fear for her life. What is to be done? You cannot simply wish the child away. You cannot hide it forever. Fulbert, if he finds out, will be driven to new heights of madness. His rage will no longer be about lost honor, it will be about a ruined family line, a permanent, living monument to his shame. Your mind, the one that can dismantle any philosophical argument, now works feverishly on a practical problem. You need to get Héloïse out of Paris. You need to hide her, protect her, and see her through the pregnancy far from her uncle's eyes. The solution, as always, lies in your past. You think of your family, the ones you turned your back on for a life of scholarship. You think of your sister. The plan is simple and desperate. You will orchestrate an escape. You will steal Héloïse away from her uncle's house in the dead of night and send her to the one place you know she will be safe, your family home in Brittany. Historians have often analyzed this moment as the turning point where your story tips from romance into tragedy. Your decisions are no longer about love and desire, but about damage control. The joy and intellectual spark of your early days together are being buried under layers of fear and social calculation. The great debate between you and Héloïse is no longer about philosophy, it's about how to survive the consequences of your own actions. You send a message back to her, laying out the plan. It's a rescue mission, a covert operation. It feels dramatic, heroic even. You are saving your beloved from the clutches of her furious guardian. But it's also a retreat. You are not standing and fighting for your love in the light of day. You are running, hiding, and hoping the problem will somehow resolve itself hundreds of miles away. Héloïse agrees. She is, as ever, fearless. She is ready to leave everything she knows for the sake of your child and your love. Her courage only highlights your own mounting panic. She is embracing the future, while you are desperately trying to outrun the past. The stage is set for a nighttime flight, a desperate gamble that will only deepen the wound you have already inflicted on the proud and vengeful heart of Canon Nephew Albert. The night of the escape is a sliver of moon and a sky full of cold stars. Paris is asleep, a labyrinth of blacked-out alleys and silent stone. Every sound is magnified: the distant bark of a dog, the rustle of straw in the wind, the frantic beating of your own heart. This is not a philosophical debate, this is real. The consequences are immediate and dangerous. You have arranged everything with the precision of a military campaign. A trusted friend is waiting with horses in a dark from Fulbert's house. You have given Héloïse specific instructions. She is to dress in the humble garb of a nun. This detail is a stroke of pragmatic genius on your part. A lone woman traveling at night would be an object of suspicion, vulnerable to assault or questioning by the city watch. But a nun is sacred. Almost or even question a woman in a holy habit would be a grave sin. It is the perfect disguise, an instant cloak of respectability and protection. It is also, of course, deeply, painfully ironic. You are dressing your pregnant lover as a symbol of chastity to smuggle her out of the city. You wait in the shadows across the street from the house. It feels like an eternity. Your mind, usually a fortress of logic, is a whirlwind of what-ifs. What if Fulbert wakes up? What if a neighbor sees her leaving? What if the city gate guards are more vigilant than usual? Then, a side door creaks open. A figure emerges, shrouded in the dark, simple wool of a nun's habit. It's her. She moves quickly, silently, a ghost gliding through the sleeping city. You meet her, and for a moment, you just hold her. You can feel her trembling, whether from cold, fear, or excitement, you can't tell. There are no words. The time for words is over. You lead her through the twisting, unlit streets. Your footsteps echo an ovingulm on the cobblestones. Every shadow seems to hold a threat. You are a scholar, a man of words, but tonight you are a conspirator, a fugitive. You reach the waiting horses. Your friend, a silhouette against the starlight, helps her mount. You give him a pouch of coins and a final, whispered instruction: ride hard, and don't stop until you reach the open country. You hand Héloïse into the care of your friend. You watch as they disappear into the darkness, the sound of their horses' hooves fading until there is only silence. You are left alone in the cold, standing in the middle of a deserted street in Paris. You have done it. She is safe. She is on her way to your sister Denise, in the relative safety and obscurity of Le Panet, your family's estate in Brittany. You return to your own lodgings, your mind a chaotic mix of relief and dread. The immediate danger is past, but the larger crisis is just beginning. What do you say to Fulbert in the morning? This act, this abduction, as Abelard would surely see it is an escalation. You have moved from deception to outright theft. You have stolen his niece, his ward, the centerpiece of his life, from under his nose. His rage, which was already at a boiling point, will now become something else entirely. It will become a fixation, an obsession. Historians looking back at this moment are often struck by your audacity. You seem to be acting entirely on instinct, making bold, dramatic moves without fully calculating the endgame. Where did you think this was all heading? Did you have a long-term plan? The evidence from your own writings suggests not really. You were reacting, surviving, lurching from one crisis to the next. The great logician was being ruled by impulse and fear. It is also worth noting the sheer trust Héloïse placed in you. She left her home, her city, everything she knew, and embarked on a long, arduous journey into a strange land, all based on your plan. She was placing her life, and the life of your unborn child, entirely in your hands. This level of trust is a testament to the depth of her love, and it adds another layer of weight, another burden of responsibility, onto your already strained shoulders. The next morning, the storm breaks. Abelard discovers her empty room. His fury is apoplectic, biblical. He is a man robbed, humiliated, and utterly enraged. He knows instantly that you're responsible. He comes for you, but you are ready. You meet his rage with a prepared story, a tapestry of half-truths. You tell him she has chosen to retreat to a convent for a time, to pray and reflect. A flimsy lie, but one he cannot immediately disprove. He doesn't believe you, not for a second. But he has no proof. He doesn't know where she is. You have bought yourself time, but you have also declared war. The conflict is no longer a private matter of a broken trust. It is now a public feud, and you have just dealt Abelard a profound and unforgivable blow. He will not rest until he has had his revenge. Weeks turn into months. You remain in Paris, a city that now feels hollow and tense. You throw yourself back into your work, but it's a charade. You deliver your lectures, engage in debates, and maintain the public facade of the great Abelard, but your mind is hundreds of miles away in Brittany. You live for the infrequent, smuggled letters that arrive from your sister's home. The letters bring news. Héloïse as well. The country air suits her. Your sister, Denise, has welcomed her with kindness and discretion. The deception is holding the local community, believes her to be a distant cousin, a young widow perhaps, seeking refuge in the countryside. For now, the secret is safe. Then, a letter arrives that makes your hands tremble. Héloïse has given birth. It's a boy. He is healthy. The wave of relief that washes over you is so powerful, it almost brings you to your knees. The greatest fear, the perilous ordeal of childbirth, is over. In her letter, she tells you she has named him, and the name she has chosen is a testament to the strange, beautiful, and unapologetically nerdy love that you share. She has named him Astral. Today the name sounds bizarre, almost comical, but in your world, it is a name brimming with meaning. An astral orb is a complex and elegant scientific instrument, an intricate disc of brass used by astronomers and navigators to measure the position of the stars. It is a tool of science, of looking to the heavens to understand one's place in the universe. It is a symbol of knowledge, of wisdom, of the highest aspirations of the mind. To name your son Astrolabe is the most you thing imaginable. It's a philosophical statement. It's a thumb in the eye of a world that would call him a bastard, a child of sin. Instead, you have named him after an instrument of pure, beautiful, rational truth. He is not a product of shame, he is a product of two great minds, a celestial event in his own right. This little piece of trivia, the name of your son, is one of the most poignant details in your entire story. It's a reminder that even in the depths of your crisis, your love was still defined by its intellectual core. You are not just lovers, you were intellectual soulmates, and your child's name was a reflection of that unique bond. The birth of your son, however, transforms the situation from a temporary crisis into a permanent reality. Astrolabe is not a secret that can be kept forever. He is a person. He will grow up. He will need a name, a father, a place in the world. The temporary solution of hiding Héloïse in Brittany is no longer sustainable. You have to do something. The Philbert's rage has not subsided. It has settled into a low, simmering obsession. He is a man publicly shamed, and every day that passes without his niece, his humiliation deepens. The gossips of Paris are having a field day. You hear the whispers. You see the sideways glances. Your reputation is taking a beating. You are no longer just the brilliant but arrogant master, you are now the immoral homewrecker, the seducer of a young prodigy. Your career is suffering. Your enemies are emboldened. They attack your theological positions with new vigor, but their real target is your character. The moral high ground, from which you so enjoyed launching your intellectual attacks, has crumbled beneath your feet. You are caught in a vice. On one side you have a son and the woman you love, hidden away, their future uncertain. On the other, you have a vengeful canon, a damaged career, and a growing public scandal. The logician in you knows that this state of affairs cannot hold. A choice must be made. This leads to one of the most debated decisions of your life. After weeks of agonizing, you devise a new plan, a plan you believe will solve everything. It is a plan born of desperation, a classic attempt to find a middle ground where none exists. You will try to appease Héloïse, legitimize your son, and save your career, all in one go. You will propose marriage. You travel to Brittany. You see your son for the first time. You hold this tiny, helpless creature named after a scientific instrument, and the weight of your responsibility becomes terrifyingly real. You see Héloïse, no longer a girl in a library, but a mother. The love is still there, deep and undeniable, but it is now tempered with the hard realities of life. You lay out your plan to her. You will confess everything. You will offer to marry Héloïse to restore her honor and his. But and this is the crucial part, the part that reveals how much you are still trying to save yourself. The marriage must be kept a secret. A public marriage would mean the absolute end of your academic career, as high-ranking scholars were expected to be celibate. A secret marriage, you reason, could satisfy Philbert's honor while allowing you to continue your life's work. It is, you believe, a perfectly logical, elegantly crafted solution. A compromise that gives everyone what they want. You are about to discover that the human heart, particularly the heart of Héloïse, does not operate on logic. Armed with what you believe is an infallible solution, you leave Brittany and return to Paris to face the dragon in his lair. You request a meeting with Philbert. He grants it, his mood one of cold, simmering fury. The air in his study is thick with unspoken resentment. You don't try to lie or dissemble. The time for that is long past. You humble yourself completely. You confess everything: the affair, the pregnancy, the escape to Brittany, the birth of your son. You watch his face as you speak, and you see the flicker of vindicated rage. He knew it all along. But you also see a flicker of something else: pain. The pain of a man whose love, however misguided and possessive, has been profoundly betrayed. Then you present your peace offering, your grand solution. I have done you and your niece a great wrong, you say, your voice steady, your demeanor one of profound contrition. There is only one way to make amends. I will marry her. The offer hangs in the room. It is more than Philbert could have hoped for. Marriage to the great Peter Abelard, even in these scandalous circumstances, would be a stunning turn of events. It would restore Héloïse's honor in the eyes of the world. It would, in a way, salvage his untattered reputation. It turns a sordid affair into a slightly scandalous, but ultimately respectable union. But then you add the condition. The marriage, you state, must be kept a secret. You explain your reasoning, which to you sounds perfectly logical. A public marriage would force you to abandon your clerical and academic career. You are a clerk, a master. Celibacy is a professional requirement. If the marriage is public, your life's work is over. But a secret marriage solves everything. He gets his honor back, Héloïse gets the security of being a wife, the child gets a legitimate father, and you get to keep your career. F.U. Albert listens. He is a practical man, and despite his rage, he understands the logic. His primary concern is honor, and a secret marriage, known only to a small circle of trusted friends, would satisfy that need. He can hold the knowledge of the union as a weapon, a guarantee of your good behavior. The secrecy is a small price to pay for the restoration of his family's name. He agrees. He even seems moved by your willingness to make such a sacrifice, sealing the pact with a tearful embrace. It seems brokered a fragile peace. And so you travel back to Brittany to bring Héloïse home, confident that you have averted disaster. You have navigated the treacherous waters of FULBRT's rage and emerged with a workable compromise. The secret wedding takes place in the dead of night, in a small, out-of-the-way church in Paris. The only witnesses are F.U. Albert and a few of your most trusted friends. The ceremony is rushed, furtive, the opposite of a joyous celebration. It feels less like a union and more like the signing of a treaty. The priest murmurs the Latin rites, you exchange your vows in hushed tones, and just like that, you are husband and wife. Here's a little bit of medieval trivia for you. Clandestine marriages were a huge problem for the church in this period. Without a system of official records or licenses, it was hard to prove who was married to whom. Two people could simply exchange vows in private and, according to a certain school of thought, they were considered married in the eyes of God. The church was trying to crack down on this, insisting on public bans and a ceremony performed by a priest. But the practice of secret marriages persisted. Yours, being performed by a priest with witnesses, was technically valid, but its secrecy put it in a legal and moral grey area. In the immediate aftermath of the wedding, a strange calm settles over your life. You and Héloïse are together again, albeit under the watchful eye of F.U. Albert. Your son, Astrolabe, remains in the care of your sister in Brittany, a living secret that must be kept at a distance. You can resume some semblance of a life together, stealing moments of marital intimacy under the guise of your ongoing tutelage. You have done it. You have navigated the crisis. You have satisfied everyone. You have, through sheer force of logic and will, bent reality to your desires. You have your love, your wife, and your career. You believe you have successfully squared the circle. It is a fatal miscalculation. You have appeased FULBRT's sense of honor. You have satisfied your own need to preserve your career. But in all of this frantic, logical planning, you have failed to truly listen to the one person whose opinion matters most, your new wife. You have imposed a solution on her, believing it to be in her best interest. You are about to find out, in no uncertain terms, that she sees things very, very differently. Historians still debate the dynamics of this secret marriage. Was it a genuine attempt at a solution, or a selfish act designed primarily to save your own skin? The answer you give in your own autobiography is brutally self-critical. You admit you were motivated by vanity and a desire to hang on to your fame. But at this moment, in the quiet aftermath of the secret ceremony, you allow yourself to believe you are a hero, the man who saved his family. You return to Brittany triumphant, the architect of a brilliant compromise. You explain the arrangement to Héloïse, the secret marriage, the appeasement of F.U. Albert, the preservation of your career. You expect her to be relieved, grateful. You have, after all, solved the problem. Her reaction is not what you expect. It is not relief. It is not gratitude. It is a fierce, passionate, and intellectually rigorous opposition. She doesn't want to marry you. You are stunned. You, a man, are offering to do the honorable thing, to marry the woman you got pregnant, and she is refusing. It's a scenario so contrary to the social norms of your time that you can barely comprehend it. But Héloïse is not a typical woman of her time. She has a mind of her own, and she proceeds to lay out her argument against the marriage with the same devastating logic she once applied to the texts of Boethius. It is one of the most remarkable and, frankly, proto-feminist arguments of the entire medieval period. First, she argues for your sake. What honor will this bring me? She asks. If it destroys yours, what kind of love is it that hobbles the one it loves? She knows, better than anyone, that your career is your lifeblood. There's a threat to that. Secrets have a way of getting out. The slightest rumor of a wife would be seized upon by your rivals. She argues that being your mistress is a greater honor than being your wife, because as your mistress, she does not impede your destiny. As your wife, she becomes a liability, a chain around the ankle of your genius. Then, she argues for the sake of philosophy itself. She quotes the great authorities Street, Paul, Street, Jerome, the ancient philosophers, all of whom argued that a true scholar, a true seeker of wisdom, cannot be encumbered by domestic life. A wife, children, a household, these are distractions from the pure pursuit of knowledge. What harmony can there be, she asks, between the student in the cradle, the deskant that sits? She argues that by marrying her, you would be betraying not just yourself, but your higher calling. Finally, and most radically, she argues for her own freedom. She tells you that she would rather be your whore, your Meretrix, than your empress. It's a shocking choice of words. What she means is that she prefers a relationship based on pure love and free choice, not one bound by legal contract and social obligation. As your mistress, she is with you because she wants to be. As your wife, she is with you because she has to be. She sees marriage not as a sanctuary, but as a cage, a reduction of their extraordinary connection to a mundane, domestic institution. It's an astonishing argument. Here is a woman in the 12th century, with no power, no rights, arguing for a relationship outside the bounds of societal convention, based on principles of intellectual freedom and mutual respect. She is essentially arguing for free love, a concept that wouldn't gain traction for another 800 years. This is a key point that historians and feminist scholars absolutely love. Héloïse's letters, where she recounts these arguments, are a rare and precious window into the mind of a medieval woman who refused to be defined by the roles society offered her. Was she truly this radical, or were her arguments later polished and sharpened in the writing of her letters? Long after the fact, it's a source of endless debate. But the power of the ideas remains. You, of course, are completely bewildered by this. Your carefully constructed, logical solution has been dismantled by a superior logic, one rooted in a kind of radical idealism you cannot grasp. Your plan was about managing a social problem. Her argument is about preserving an ideal, but you don't listen. Or rather, you cannot afford to. Fulbert's wrath is a more immediate threat than the abstract principles of philosophical purity. Your fear of his vengeance outweighs your respect for her arguments. You are a man caught between an idealistic woman and a furious uncle, and you choose the path of least immediate resistance. You override her objections. You insist. You cajole. You persuade. In the end, she yields, not because she is convinced, but because she loves you and sees that you are resolute. She agrees to the secret marriage, not with joy, but with a heavy heart and a sense of profound foreboding. She weeps, you later recall, not with happiness, but with sorrow, convinced that this path will lead to ruin for you both. She has seen the future with a clarity that you, for all your logic, lack. There will be no joy in this for us, she warns you, only a sorrow as great as the love that came before it. You dismiss her tears as feminine emotion, her arguments as impractical idealism. You believe you know best. You are the man, the master, the architect. You have won the argument and secured her consent. You proceed with the plan, dragging her along into a future she knows is doomed. You have never been more wrong in your life. The secret is kept, but it's a poison that contaminates everything. You and Héloïse are now living a complicated triple life. To the world, you are the master and she is the student, living under her uncle's roof. To a tiny, trusted circle, you are husband and wife. And in the quietest, most stolen moments, you are simply two lovers trying to recapture the magic you once had. But the magic is fading, replaced by a constant, gnawing tension. The shadow of Fulbert hangs over everything. He has been appeased, but not satisfied. He watches you both with a proprietary air, a man who knows your secret and holds it over your heads. The easy trust he once had is gone, replaced by a suspicious, possessive vigilance. He had agreed to the secrecy of the marriage, but it chafes him. What good is restored honor if you can't boast about it? He wants the world to know that his niece, despite the scandal, has landed the great Peter Abelard. He begins to break his promise. He starts dropping hints to his friends, confiding in his colleagues. The whispers in Paris, which had started to die down, begin again with renewed vigor. But this time, they are not about an illicit affair, they are about a secret marriage. This is exactly what Héloïse had feared. The secret is leaking, and your academic rivals are listening. A wife Abelard has a wife, it's the perfect weapon. They can't attack your logic, but they can attack your character, your violation of the clerical ideal. To counter the rumors, you and Héloïse are forced into a painful charade. You must now pretend that the rumors are false. This leads to absurd and heartbreaking situations. When you are together in public, you must act as though you are nothing to each other. You must be cold, distant. You, who once wrote love songs that swept the city, can no longer even share a warm glance across a room. The strain is immense. The lie is exhausting, and it begins to breed resentment. You find yourselves arguing. The beautiful, intellectual sparring you once shared coalesce into bitter quarrels. Abelard, seeing this conflict, misinterprets it. He doesn't see two lovers struggling under the weight of a terrible secret. He sees you, the husband, mistreating his niece, the wife. He begins to verbally abuse Héloïse, accusing her of not being a proper, obedient wife. He then turns his anger on you, accusing you of not honoring the marriage pact. The very solution that was meant to bring peace has created a new and more toxic form of war, a domestic Cold War fought in the corridors of his house. Here's a bizarre and sad detail from your own account of this time. Abelard's anger led him to become physically abusive towards Héloïse. He, who had cherished and protected her, now saw her as a source of his continued frustration and began to mistreat her. Your marriage, intended to protect her, had ironically placed her in a situation of even greater danger from the one person she was supposed to be able to trust. You are horrified. You see her suffering. You see the trap you have created for her. The brilliant, fearless woman you fell in love with is now a prisoner in her own home, caught between a resentful uncle and a husband who cannot publicly claim her. The guilt is crushing. You realize you have to get her out. Again, the situation isn't tenable. You need to put her somewhere safe, somewhere far from Abelard's rage and the poisonous gossip of Paris. Your mind, once again, turns to the church as a sanctuary. Not as a punishment, but as a refuge. You decide to place her in a convent in Argenteuil, a place where she had spent some time as a young girl. It's a respectable place run by nuns. You reason that Abelard would not dare to harm her or cause a scene within the sacred walls of a convent. You convince Héloïse that this is a temporary measure, a way for things to cool down. A strategic retreat until you can figure out a more permanent solution. This is perhaps the single most catastrophic decision of your entire life. Historians have debated this choice for centuries. Were you truly trying to protect her, or were you, consciously or subconsciously, trying to get rid of the problem? Were you pushing her towards a monastic life to free yourself from the entanglement of your marriage? Your own later writings are filled with guilt and self-recrimination over this act, suggesting you knew, even then, that it was a selfish and cowardly move. You take her to the convent. You watch as she puts on the novice's habit, not as a disguise this time, but for real. To Abelard and his circle. This looks exactly like what he has secretly feared all along, that you, having had your way with his niece and married her only under duress, are now casting her aside, forcing her into a convent so you can be free. You meant it as a shield. You intended it as a temporary solution. He sees it as the ultimate, final betrayal. The fragile peace you had brokered shatters into a million pieces. His rage, which had been simmering, now explodes into a white-hot, vengeful inferno. He is convinced you have dishonored him, dishonored his niece, and broken your sacred vow. He will not seek redress through the courts or the church. He will seek his own, brutal, personal form of justice. The convent at Argenteuil is, on the surface, a place of peace. The rhythm of life is dictated by the ringing of bells for prayer matins, Lord's prime to see. The air smells of beeswax, incense, and damp stone. For Héloïse, it's a familiar world. She was educated in a similar environment. But this time, she is not here as a student. She is here as a refugee. You visit her, of course. You ride out from Paris and meet in the convent's parlor, a formal, supervised room where outsiders can speak with the nuns. The conversations are strained, whispered. A nun is always nearby, a silent, disapproving presence. The easy intimacy you once shared is impossible here. You are no longer lovers in a secret library, you are a scandalous couple meeting in a place of ostentatious piety. Héloïse adapts to the life with a disquieting ease. She is intelligent, disciplined, and devout. The nuns are impressed by her piety and her learning. She fits in perfectly, and this to you is terrifying. You see her slipping away from you, disappearing into this new role. Was this her destiny all along? Was your love affair just a detour on her path, just a detour on her path to God? The thought fills you with a jealous, desperate panic. You tell yourself this is temporary, a strategic move, but the days turn into weeks and no new plan emerges. You are back in Paris, teaching, writing, trying to rebuild your career. But you are undivided. Part of you is relieved. The daily tension of life in FULBRT's house is gone. The immediate crisis is averted. You are, for the first time in months, free. But it's a guilty freedom. And your actions are viewed very differently by the outside world. To FULBRT, and to the gossip mongers of Paris, the story is simple and sordid. Abelard, the great seducer, has finally tired of his conquest. Having secretly married her, he has now disposed of her, forcing her into a convent so he can continue his glamorous career unencumbered. It's a narrative of pure villainy, and you are its star. This interpretation is the spark that lights the fuse of FULBRT's revenge. He sees his niece, his brilliant, precious Héloïse, locked away. He believes you have not just dishonored her, but discarded her like an old book. His love for her, twisted as it was by ego and pride, now demands vengeance. The humiliation he has suffered is absolute. His name is a joke in the city. His mouth's work, his masterpiece, is ruined and locked away in a nunnery. And here is a crucial, often misunderstood story. FULBRT's revenge is not just about you. It's about her. He likely believes that by destroying you, he is, in some twisted way, avenging her honor. He sees her as a victim, and he, her guardian, must punish her victimizer. He cannot see her agency, her complicity, her unfierce love for you. In his mind, she is a passive pawn in your monstrous game. Historians have long debated the psychology of FULBRT. Was he a monster or a man driven mad by a grief and shame he could not process? The truth is likely somewhere in between. He is a man of his time, a time when honor was a tangible commodity, and a man's control over the women in his family was a direct measure of his worth. You have taken that from him, and in his eyes you have forfeited your right to be treated as a civilized man. He begins to plot. He does not turn to the law. The law is for public disputes. This is a personal injury, a wound to his very soul. It requires a personal, physical, and deeply symbolic form of justice. He gathers his kinsmen, his allies, men who feel his shame as their own. He also has money. He can hire thugs, men who will do anything for a few coins, men with no fear of God or the law. The plan they devise is not for your death. To kill you would be a crime, and it would make you a martyr. They want something more intimate, more humiliating. They want to unman you, literally and figuratively. They want to destroy the very core of your identity as a man and as a scholar. The punishment they choose is castration. It is a punishment with a long and grim history, often used for sexual offenders or political rivals. It was designed not just to cause physical pain, but to inflict the ultimate social and symbolic shame. It would make it impossible for you to father more children. It would, in the eyes of the church, purify you of your lust. And most importantly, it would make you an object of ridicule, a freak. It would destroy your authority, your charisma, your very presence as a public figure. It was a punishment designed to silence you forever. While you are in Paris, agonizing over your stalled career and your estranged wife, this dark conspiracy is taking shape in the shadows. You are so consumed by your own problems, so focused on the intellectual and social fallout of your affair, that you are completely oblivious to the physical danger you are in. You still believe your battles are fought with words. You have no idea that your enemies have decided to answer your logic with knives. The false piece is seductive, Back in your own lodgings in Paris, away from the suffocating atmosphere of FULBRT's house, you begin to breathe again. You resume your lectures with a renewed, almost manic energy. The crowds of students are still there, their adoration a comforting balm on your wounded ego. You tell yourself that you can recover from this. You are Peter Abelard. Your intellect is your shield. You can outthink any problem, out-argue any opponent. You just need time. You will write a new, brilliant book, and the world will forget the affair and remember only the genius. You are living in a self-imposed delusion. Across the city, in the cold, quiet rooms of his Canon RY, F.U.L.Bert is living in a very different reality. He is not moving on. He is marinating in his own humiliation. Every day is a fresh torment. When he walks through the cloisters of Notre Dame, he feels the eyes of his fellow canons on his back. He hears the whispers that stop abruptly when he enters a room. The story of his niece and her famous tutor is its tragic, foolish centerpiece. Your decision to place Héloïse in the convent at Argenteuil is the final, unforgivable act. In your mind, you were protecting her. In his mind, you have taken his masterpiece, the brilliant woman he shaped, and thrown her into a nunnery to rot. Also, you could wash your hands of the affair and resume your glamorous life. He sees your return to the lecture hall not as a sign of resilience, but as a monstrous display of selfish indifference. His love for Héloïse, a possessive, suffocating love, now coalesces into a righteous fury on her behalf. He imagines her weeping in her cell, abandoned and heartbroken. He sees her as the ultimate victim, and you as the predator who has devoured her life and moved on without a backward glance. He cannot conceive of her own will, her own deep and abiding love for you. He can only see his own shame and her perceived ruin. This is the fuel for his vengeance. It's a conviction that he is not just settling a personal score, but acting as an agent of justice for his wronged niece. He is her champion, and the justice he seeks will not be found in a church court. A public trial would only air more dirty laundry, deepening his humiliation. No, this crime was personal, intimate. The punishment must be as well. Here we come to a rather grim but important aspect of your era, the blurred line between official law and private revenge. While the king and the church were trying to centralize justice, the old Germanic tradition of the blood feud, of righting a wrong done to one's family through direct, often violent, action, was still a powerful undercurrent in the culture. But necessary. It was a way of reclaiming his manhood and his family's standing in a way no court could. He begins to conspire. He is not a man of violence himself, but he has resources. He has kinsmen who feel the stain on their family honor as keenly as he does. And he has money. He finds men who are willing to do anything for coin, their loyalty for sale to the highest bidder. His plan is precise, and it relies on one crucial element: betrayal from within your own household. He identifies a weakness, a servant in your employ. Perhaps the man has a grievance against you. Perhaps he simply has a desperate need for money. For a pouch of silver, this servant agrees to leave the locks unbolted and the door to your bedchamber open. Historians still debate the composition of the attacking party. Were they all hired thugs, common criminals, or did FULBRT's own relatives participate in the act? The sources are a bit vague, but the idea of his kinsmen joining in adds another layer of horror to the story. It transforms the act from a hired crime into a ritual of familial vengeance, a collective reclaiming of honor. The trap is set. A date is chosen. The conspirators gather, their knives sharpened. FULBert, the aggrieved scholar, has become the general of a small savage army, and its target is a single, sleeping man. You, meanwhile, are oblivious. You are consumed with your own world of ideas. You spend your days crafting arguments and your evenings preparing for the next lecture. You are worried about a rival's critique of your latest work on the Trinity. You are annoyed by the rising cost of parchment. You are living the life of the mind, insulated by your own intellectual arrogance. You believe the worst is behind you. The storm has passed, and you have survived. Your mind filled with syllogism and scholastic debates, and you fall into a deep, untroubled sleep. You have no idea that the lock on your door is undone, and that the logical, ordered world you inhabit is about to be shattered by an act of pure primal brutality. Sleep comes easily. You are exhausted from the day's lectures, the mental gymnastics of debate, the sheer effort of maintaining your public persona. Your room is a small sanctuary of silence in the humming city. The familiar scent of old books and candle wax a comforting presence in the dark. You are safe. You are in your own bed. The dream you are having is formless, a jumble of words and faces when a sound slices through it. A creak, a floorboard groaning under a weight that is not your own. Your eyes snap open. The darkness in the room is no longer comforting, it's predatory. It's thick with a presence that doesn't belong. Before you can even process the thought, before you can sit up or cry out, they are on you. Shadows detach themselves from the deeper shadows of the room. There are 3, maybe 4 of them. You can't tell. They are a single, overwhelming force of silent, purposeful violence. A heavy hand clamps over your mouth, stifling the shout that dies in your throat. The pressure is immense, the smell of sweat and leather filling your nostrils. Panic, cold and absolute, floods your system. This isn't a robbery. Robbers are noisy, they want your money pouch. These men are silent, their movements brutally efficient. They pin your arms and legs to the bed. You struggle, a primal, helpless thrashing against an immovable weight. It's useless. You are utterly overpowered. One of them holds a lantern, the light carefully shielded, casting a sickening, distorted glow on the scene. In that flickering light, you see their faces. They are grim, determined. One of them you think you recognize. Is it one of Fulbrt's kinsmen? The thought is a flash of ice in your gut. This is his work. This is his revenge. Then you see the knife. It's not a dagger for fighting. It's a short, wide-bladed thing, a gelding knife, perhaps. Something a farmer would use on livestock. The man holding it says nothing. He doesn't need to. The purpose of the instrument is horribly, undeniably clear. Time seems to warp. The moment stretches into a terrifying eternity. The sounds are muted, surreal. The grunts of the men holding you down, your own muffled, desperate gasps for air. The soft, almost gentle way the blade is drawn across your lower body. There is no heroic struggle. There is no witty retort from the great Abelard. There is only the silent, methodical, and brutal execution of their task. You are a scholar, a man of ideas. Your body is just the vessel for your mind. But in this moment, your body is the entire universe, the universe being torn apart. They are not just injuring you, they are rewriting your very being. They are taking from you the physical core of your manhood, the source of the lust that, in their eyes, caused all this misery. This act, the castration, is something that modern minds struggle to comprehend in its full historical context. It was more than just a mutilation. It was a symbolic execution. In a society so deeply concerned with lineage, honor, and physical prowess, to be made a eunuch was to be rendered a social cipher. You were no longer fully a man. You were something other, an object of pity, scorn, and morbid curiosity. It was a punishment designed to strip you of your public voice by destroying your private self. The academic debate about this night often centers on a grim question: what was the precise nature of the act? The Latin term used is parts virilis, the manly parts. Did they remove everything, or was it a specific form of castration? The sources don't offer graphic detail, leaving it to the horrified imagination of the reader. What is clear is that the act was intended to be absolute and irreversible. The men finish their work with the same chilling efficiency with which they began. They release you. They don't say a word. They simply melt back into the darkness from which they came. The hand is removed from your mouth. The weight is gone from your limbs. You are left alone in your bed, in the ruins of your own body. The silence that descends is more terrible than the violence itself. You are alive. And you are enveloped in a world of profound, disbelieving shock. For a long moment, you just lie there, trying to process the impossible. Then, the first wave of agony hits you, a white-hot, searing reality that blots out everything else. Your first coherent thought is not of revenge, or of God, or even of Héloïse. It is a single, desolate question that will echo through the rest of your life: why the great logician, The man who believed every effect had a rational cause is faced with an act of such primal, brutal chaos that it defies all reason. The world as you knew it has ended in a small dark room, in a pool of your own blood. The night does not end. It bleeds into a grey, hazy dawn that brings no comfort, only a clearer view of the wreckage. The first sound you make is not a shout, but a low, animal moan of pain and disbelief. It's a sound that brings your servant, the one not involved in the conspiracy, running. The sight in your bedchamber sends him reeling back in horror. The story spreads through the house, then into the street, like a contagion. At first it's a whispered rumor, too grotesque to be believed. Abelard, the master, mutilated in his own bed, but the evidence is undeniable. The presence of physicians, the grim-faced authorities, the sheer, shocking fact of it. By midday, all of Paris knows. The reaction is not what Abelard might have expected. There is no quiet satisfaction among the populace, no sense that a great sinner has received his just deserts. Instead, there is a wave of universal shock and horror. Even your fiercest academic rivals are appalled. There are rules. There are lines that are not crossed. You can destroy a man's argument in a public debate. You can ruin his reputation with gossip and slander, but to hire thugs to break into his home and mutilate him in his sleep, that is an offense against God and civilization. The public sympathy, which had been turning against you because of the affair, swings violently and completely in your favor. You are no longer the arrogant seducer, you are the tragic victim. The story of your love for Héloïse is instantly reframed. It is no longer a sordid tale of a scholar's lust, but a great and tragic romance. Doomed by the cruelty of a vengeful old man, you have become a martyr for love, your physical suffering a testament to the passion that inspired it. Abelard's plan has backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. He sought to destroy your reputation, and instead, he has sanctified it in the public imagination. He sought to silence you, and he has given you the most powerful story you will ever tell. He sought to reclaim his own honor, and he has made his name infamous for all time. The authorities act swiftly. The law which Abelard so cavalierly bypassed now descends upon him and his conspirators. Here's an interesting little detail about medieval justice. While it could be brutal, it was also quite specific about punishments fitting the crime. The principle of lex d'alien is an eye for an eye was a powerful concept. 2 of the men who attacked you are captured. The servant who betrayed you is also caught. Their punishment is swift and brutal. They are blinded, and then, in a stroke of grimly appropriate justice, they are castrated themselves. They suffer the very same mutilation they inflicted upon you. And what of Abelard? He is a canon of the cathedral, a man of the church. This affords him some protection from the secular authorities. But he cannot escape punishment. He is stripped of all his clerical offices and his property is confiscated. He is disgraced, ruined, and forced to live out the rest of his days in obscurity, a pariah. His entire world has been destroyed by his own thirst for revenge. Historians still debate the aftermath. Did the punishment of Abelard and his men bring you any sense of justice or peace? Your own writings suggest not. The damage was too deep, the wound too personal. The legal resolution felt like a hollow postscript to the real trauma. The world could punish your attackers, but it could not undo what was done. You are confined to your bed for weeks, drifting in undoubt of a feverish haze. The physical pain is immense, but it is nothing compared to the psychological torment. The core of your being has been violated. Your pride, your famous arrogance, is shattered. You, the man who dominated every room he entered, now feel like a freak, an object of pity. You can't bear the thought of facing the world, of seeing the morbid curiosity in people's eyes. The shame is all-consuming. It's a physical presence heavier than any blanket. You feel as though you have been flayed, your innermost self exposed to the cold, judging gaze of the world. You, who lived your life on a public stage, now crave only darkness and solitude. The news reaches Héloïse at the convent in Argentoul. The horror and grief she must have felt is almost unimaginable. She is trapped behind the convent walls, unable to come to you, unable to come to you, unable to comfort you. She receives the news as a story, a piece of public gossip about the man she loves. The man whose marriage proposal she once rejected because she feared it would bring him ruin. Her worst fears, her most prescient warnings, have come true in a way more terrible than she could have ever conceived. Your physical body will eventually heal. The wounds will scar over. But the Abelard who stood at the lectern, confident and supreme, is gone forever. He died that night. The question that now haunts your waking hours is who or what will take his place. In the dark and silent aftermath, as your physical wounds slowly begin to scar over, a deeper, more profound wound festers in your soul. It is a wound of shame. The city that once adored you now pities you. You cannot walk the streets without imagining the whispers, the stares. You, Peter Abelard, the intellectual titan, have become a cautionary tale, a grotesque curiosity. The thought of returning to the lecture hall, of standing before your students as this new version of yourself, is unbearable. Your career as a public intellectual, a master of the Paris schools, is over. You know it. It was ended not by a superior argument, but by a crude knife in the dark. Your voice, once the most powerful in Europe, has been effectively silenced by shame. Where can a man so publicly broken go in the 12th century? There was often only one answer for a man in crisis, a man seeking refuge from the world, the monastery. You decide to become a monk. It is not a decision born of a sudden profound piety. You are not running to God. You are running from the world. The monastery offers a sanctuary, a place to hide. A place to hide. Behind its thick stone walls, you can escape the judging eyes of society. The monk's habit, that ensure the head, they are a kind of uniform, a way to disappear, to become anonymous. It's a living death, a burial of the man you once were. But your decision is not just about you, it's about Héloïse. In a move that has been debated and condemned for centuries, you do not just decide on your own fate, you decide on hers as well. You write to her at the convent in Argentour. You inform her of your decision to take monastic vows, and then you command her, not request, but command, to do the same. She must become a nun. Properly. Your reasoning, as you would later explain it, is a twisted mixture of logic, jealousy, and a perverse sense of honor. You cannot bear the thought of her, your wife, being out in the world while you are cloistered. What if she were to marry another nun? The thought is a torment. By forcing her to become a nun, you ensure she will belong to no one else. She will be wedded to God, a bride of Christ. It is a way of possessing her, of controlling her destiny, even as you retreat from your own. It is, without question, the most selfish act of your life. You are dragging her down with you, chaining her fate to your own brokenness. You are taking her vibrant mind, her passionate heart, and demanding she lock them away forever, all to soothe your own shattered ego. Héloïse's reaction is one of utter devastation. She has no true religious calling. Her love is for you, for the world of ideas, for the life you shared. She argues, she pleads, she resists. In her later letters, she will recall this moment with searing bitterness. At your command, I changed my habit and my heart, so that I could show you that you were the sole owner of my body and my will. But she obeys. Why, this is a question that haunts the story. Was it love, a sense of duty to her husband, or was it that, in the brutal reality of the 12th century, a disgraced woman with no family to protect her had no other viable options? The convent offered a form of security, a respectable alternative to a life of vulnerability and scorn. Whatever her reasons, she submits to your will. This is a poignant, controversial part of your story. Many modern readers see this as the ultimate act of patriarchal tyranny. And it is. But some historians offer a slightly more nuanced, though no less tragic view. By both entering the religious life, you are, in a strange way, preserving the eternal nature of your bond. You can no longer be husband and wife in the world. So you will be brother and sister in Christ, forever linked by your parallel vows. It's a tragic, spiritual sublimation of a love that can no longer exist on an earthly plane. The ceremony is a public spectacle. You take your vows first at the Abbey of Saint Denis, a royal monastery just outside Paris. The great Abelard, brought low, Stanford enthroned in rough wool. Then at the convent in Argentour, Héloïse takes the veil. She is, by all accounts, a heartbreaking figure. Young, beautiful, brilliant. She walks to the altar, weeping, to renounce a world she is not ready to leave. Friends try to dissuade her, but she is resolute in her obedience to you. She is said to have recited lines from a classical Roman poem, the words of a tragic hero lamenting her fate. The doors of the monastery and the convent close behind you both. You have successfully buried yourselves. The great love story of Peter Abelard and Héloïse is, it seems, over. You have traded the passion of the library for the cold stone of the monastic cell. You sought silence and anonymity. You believe you have found peace. But you are still Peter Abelard, and you are about to discover that you can change your clothes, but you cannot change your nature. The monastery is not an escape. It is just a new arena for a new set of battles. You arrive at the Abbey of Saint Denis, a place steeped in the history and power of the French monarchy. It is ancient, wealthy, and deeply conservative. You imagine a life of quiet contemplation, of losing yourself in the timeless rhythm of prayer and penitence. You are, once again, profoundly mistaken. The monastery is not the serene sanctuary you envisioned. It's a microcosm of the world you just left, with its own hierarchies, its own politics, and its own bitter rivalries. And you, Peter Abelard, are constitutionally incapable of just shutting up and fitting in. Your fame follows you through the abbey gates. The other monks don't know what to make of you. Some are starstruck, eager to learn from the legendary master. Others are deeply suspicious. They see you as a disgraced celebrity, a worldly intellectual whose presence pollutes their sacred space. The abbot, a man named Sugar who is more of a political operator than a spiritual leader, is particularly wary of you. You try to be a good monk. You attend the services. You perform the manual labor. You eat the simple food. But your mind, the restless, critical engine that defines you, will not be still. You read the books in the monastery's library, and you are appalled. You find the monks to be lazy, their lessons sloppy, their theological understanding shallow. You see their lives not as pious, but as luxurious and dissolute, a far cry from the monastic ideal of poverty and discipline. And you can't help but point it out. You start by correcting their chanting. You move on to critiquing the sermons. Before long, you are engaging your fellow monks in the same kind of aggressive, logical debates that made you famous in Paris. You are, in essence, trying to turn the monastery into your own personal lecture hall. This does not make you popular. The breaking point comes over a matter of history. The monks of Saint Denis hold a deep and proud belief that their patron saint, Saint Denis or Dionysius, is the same Dionysius the Areopagite mentioned in the Bible's Acts of the Apostles. It's a cornerstone of their identity and a major source of their prestige. You, being a meticulous scholar, read the historical texts and conclude that this is impossible. The two figures lived centuries apart. It's a historical error. And you tell them, publicly, you are not just questioning a minor belief, you are attacking the very foundation of their abbey's pride and historical legitimacy. This is not a philosophical disagreement, it's sacrilege. The monks are outraged. Your life in the monastery becomes unbearable. You are accused of being arrogant, a troublemaker, a heretic. Your attempt to find a quiet refuge has failed spectacularly. You have simply traded one set of enemies for another. This little episode is a classic example of your personality. Even when it is profoundly against your own self-interest, you cannot suffer a fool or a faulty argument gladly. Your commitment to what you see as rational truth overrides any sense of diplomacy or social grace. Historians sometimes debate whether this was a noble, unwavering commitment to intellectual honesty or a pathological need to prove you were the smartest person in any room. Fearing for your safety among the enraged monks, you managed to get permission to leave the abbey and establish a small, rustic hermitage of your own in the countryside near Troyes. You build a simple oratory, a chapel made of reeds and thatch, and dedicate it to the Paraclete, the Holy Spirit, the Comforter. You hope for solitude, for a chance to finally live a quiet life of prayer and study. But your fame is a magnet. Your old students, hearing that the great Abelard is teaching again, begin to seek you out. They leave the schools of Paris and flock to your remote wilderness retreat. They build crude huts around your oratory, eager to hear you speak. Soon you are surrounded by a makeshift university in the middle of a forest. You are teaching again, and you are alive again. The thrill of intellectual combat, the joy of shaping young minds, it all comes rushing back. You are no longer the broken victim, you are the master reborn, rising from the ashes in a blaze of intellectual glory. You write new books, you develop your theological ideas, and you are once again at the center of the European intellectual world. But this new success brings new dangers. Your ideas, particularly your writings on the nature of the Trinity, are seen as radical and dangerous by the conservative church establishment. Your enemies, led by the powerful and deeply devout Bernard of Clairvaux, begin to circle. They see your renewed fame not as a comeback story, but as the resurgence of a dangerous heresy. You have escaped the shame of your mutilation, you have escaped the stifling conformity of the monastery. But you have not escaped yourself. You are still Peter Abelard, the brilliant, arrogant, and controversial thinker. And you have just painted a fresh target on your back. The peace you found in your hermitage at the Paraclete will be short-lived. The biggest intellectual battle of your life is just around the corner. While you are experiencing your tumultuous rebirth as a hermit scholar in the wilderness, Héloïse is undergoing her own profound transformation. But hers is not a story of public battles and intellectual controversy. It is a quieter, but no less remarkable, ascent. She is at the convent in Argentor, the place you sent her for protection. But the convent itself comes under a cloud of scandal. The nuns are accused of lax discipline and immoral behavior. The abbot Sugar of St. Denis, your old nemesis, sees an opportunity. He has a historical claim to the lands the convent sits on. And using the scandal as a pretext, he has the nuns expelled and dissolves their community. Héloïse and her sisters in Christ are once again homeless. You hear of their plight, and for the first time since the night of your attack, you perform an act of pure, uncomplicated generosity. You have a new community, a thriving intellectual center at your hermitage of the Paraclete. But you are about to leave it, having been elected abbot of a remote and rugged monastery in Brittany. So you make a decision. You will give the Paraclete the land, the chapel, the buildings your students built to Héloïse and her scattered nuns. It is a gesture of profound significance. The Paraclete, the Comforter, was your refuge, the place of your own resurrection. Now you are giving it to her, a home for her and a new community of women. You effectively make her your successor. Héloïse arrives at the Paraclete with a small band of loyal nuns and takes charge. And here, away from the scandals of Argentou and the shadow of your own overwhelming presence, she comes into her own. She proves to be an extraordinary leader. She is not just pious and learned, she is a gifted administrator, a wise spiritual guide, and a formidable fundraiser. She establishes a new kind of monastic community. Under her leadership, the Paraclete becomes famous not for its wealth or its ancient relics, but for its serious intellectual life and its deep piety. It is a place where women are not just taught to pray, but to think. Héloïse insists on a high standard of literacy, not just in Latin, but in Greek and Hebrew as well, so her nuns can read the scriptures in their original languages. This is a quiet but radical act. In an age where even most male monasteries were not focused on deep scholarship, she creates a powerhouse of female learning. The curriculum she designs is rigorous. The spiritual life she cultivates is profound. The Paraclete becomes a model convent, attracting women from noble families all over France. Here's a fascinating and often overlooked detail about her leadership. Héloïse was a pioneer in monastic reform. She wrote extensively to you, asking for guidance on creating a new rule, a regula specifically for women. The existing Benedictine rule was designed for men, and she found many of its requirements, from the type of clothing to the prescribed physical labor, to be ill-suited for nuns. Her letters show a sharp, practical mind wrestling with the challenges of creating a sustainable and meaningful religious life for women. It's a powerful example of her moving from the role of student to that of a leader and innovator in her own right. She becomes Abbess Héloïse, a figure of immense respect and authority. Popes and kings write to her, seeking her counsel. Bernard of Clairvaux, the man who will become your greatest enemy, holds her in the highest esteem, praising her wisdom and the model community she has built. She has, through her own talent and determination, forged a new identity for herself, one that is entirely independent of you. She is no longer just Abelard's Héloïse, she is the abbess of the Paraclete. And yet your connection remains. You are their spiritual father. You help her draw up the rules for her new order. You write sermons and theological texts for her and her nuns. Your relationship, once defined by a passionate physical love, is now transformed into a formal, spiritual partnership. You are the distant founding father, she is the powerful on-the-ground leader. For years, this is the status quo. You are struggling in your remote, savage monastery in Brittany, fighting with monks you describe as brutish and violent. She is flourishing, building a legacy of learning and piety. You hear tales of her success, of the reverence in which she is held. And historians have often wondered what you truly felt about this. Were you proud? Your writings suggest you were. But was there also a hint of jealousy, a touch of resentment? She, whom you had forced into this life, was succeeding in it more brilliantly than you were in yours. She had found a peace and a purpose that still eluded you. The student had, in many ways, surpassed the master. The dynamic between you had shifted, subtly but irrevocably. She no longer needed you as a teacher or a protector. If anything, you now needed her prayers and her stable, successful legacy more than she needed you. Years have passed. You are no longer the embattled abbot in Brittany. You have left that savage monastery and returned to the intellectual fray, teaching once again near Paris. You are older, scarred, but your mind is as sharp as ever. The fire of controversy still follows you. It is during this period that you decide to write your story. Not a theological treatise, but something deeply personal. You compose a long letter addressed to an unnamed friend who is suffering. In this letter, you recount the entire saga of your life, your rise to fame, your love for Héloïse, the birth of your son, the vengeance of Fulbert, your castration, and your subsequent struggles in the monastic world. You title it Historia Calamitatum, the story of my misfortunes. It is a masterpiece of self-revelation, a document almost unprecedented in its time for its raw honesty and psychological depth. It is part autobiography, part confession, part therapy. You portray yourself as a modern-day Job, a man tested by God with an endless series of calamities. You are brutally honest about your own arrogance, your vanity, your calculated seduction of Héloïse. You spare no one, least of all yourself. But why did you write it? This is one of the great literary mysteries of the Middle Ages. Was it truly a consoling letter for a friend, or was that just a literary device? Many scholars believe you wrote it as a form of public relations, a piece of strategic self-fashioning. It was an apology, a defense of your life, an attempt to reframe your story and cast yourself as a tragic hero rather than a disgraced sinner. By confessing your faults so openly, you preempt the attacks of your enemies. It's a brilliant rhetorical strategy. You cannot accuse me of sins I have already confessed myself. Whatever your intention, a copy of this explosive document, whether by accident or by your own design, leaves your hands and begins to circulate among the literary and clerical elite of France. It is the talk of the town. A sensational bestseller passed from hand to hand, and a copy finds its way to the Paraclete. It falls into the hands of the abbess Héloïse. She reads your account of your shared past, your misfortunes, and she is, to put it mildly, not pleased. The letter reopens wounds that have been cauterized by time and piety. It awakens the woman who has been sleeping beneath the abbess's habit. She is moved, of course, by the story of your suffering. But she is also angered. She feels that your narrative is incomplete, self-absorbed. You wrote a history of your calamities. But what about her? As you speak of your shame, your pain, your shattered career? But you barely touch upon her own sacrifices, her own heartbreak, the life she gave up for you. Your story of us is really a story of me. So she picks up a pen, and she writes to you. It is the first time in years that she has written to you not as the formal abbess, but as Héloïse the woman. The letter that she writes is one of the most remarkable documents in the history of love and literature. It is a torrent of emotion, of love, rage, tenderness, and bitter resentment. To her master, no, her father to her husband, no, her brother from his handmaid, no, his daughter, his wife, no, his sister to Abelard from Héloïse. The opening line alone is a dizzying declaration of their tangled, indefinable relationship. She tells you she has read your Historia Calamitatum. She weeps for your suffering. But she also chides you for your silence. Why did you write to a friend and not to her? Does she not deserve a word of comfort or counsel from her husband and brother in Christ? Then she unleashes the core of her argument, a truth she has held in her heart for more than a decade. She tells you that her love for you has never died. It is as fierce and as absolute as it was in the library of Fulbrt's house. She confesses that her piety is a sham. She may wear the habit of a nun, but in her heart, she admits that even during the most solemn moments of the Mass, her mind is filled with lustful memories of you. And you are the cause. It is a devastating confession. She rips away the placid facade of the wise abbess and reveals the passionate, tormented woman underneath. She is not the placid spiritual partner you have imagined her to be. She is a woman still very much in love, and still very much in pain. Your letter, meant to be a story of your own misfortunes, has inadvertently uncorked a fountain of hers. And it has just initiated the final, and perhaps most famous, chapter of your story, your legendary exchange of letters. Her letter arrives like a lightning bolt from a clear sky. You are expecting, perhaps, a note of formal sympathy from the abbess of the Paraclete. Instead, you receive a passionate, searing confession from Héloïse, the woman you thought was lost to you forever. You are shaken. Her raw, unfiltered emotion, her declaration of undiminished earthly love, is deeply unsettling. It threatens the carefully constructed peace you have built for yourself. You have sublimated your past into a tragic narrative. You have recast yourself as a philosopher monk, a man who has transcended the flesh. Her letter drowns you right back into the messy, complicated, and passionate reality of your shared history. You write back to her, but your letter is not the one she wants. It is cautious, distant, and deeply, almost painfully pious. You address her not as the lover she has revealed herself to be, but as a sister in Christ. You refuse to engage with her declarations of worldly passion. Instead, you steer the conversation firmly toward God. You tell her to stop dwelling on the past. You urge her to redirect her love from you, a mutilated, unwretched sinner, to Jesus, her true celestial bridegroom. You fill your letter with scriptural quotations, theological arguments, and paternalistic advice. You essentially tell her to pray harder. You are Abelard, the spiritual director, Abelard, writing to a nun under your care. You are deliberately, willfully, ignoring the cry of the woman you love. This response, and the ones that follow from the core of your famous correspondence, it is a dialogue of the deaf, a painful exchange between two people who are talking about two completely different things. She writes to you about love. You write back to her about theology. Héloïse is not satisfied. She writes again, her tone more insistent, more frustrated. She calls you out on your emotional cowardice. She accuses you of being cold, of never having truly loved her if you can so easily dismiss her feelings. She asks a devastating question: was your love for her merely lust? A desire you can no longer fulfill and therefore now conveniently sublimate into piety. Tell me one thing if you can, she writes, why after our conversion, which you alone decided, I have been so neglected and forgotten by you. It is a direct hit, an accusation of abandonment that cuts to the very core of your shared history. This is a point historians love to analyze. Who is the hero of these letters? For centuries, you were seen as the wise spiritual guide, gently leading the passionate, worldly Héloïse toward salvation. But in the last century, the consensus has flipped. Modern readers almost universally side with Héloïse. They see her as the emotionally honest one, the one brave enough to speak the truth of her heart. They see you as evasive, emotionally stunted, hiding behind a mask of piety because you are unable or unwilling to confront the reality of your shared past and her enduring love. Your correspondence is a fascinating psychological duel. She tries to pull you back to the personal, the emotional. You consistently push her toward the universal, the theological. It is, in a way, a continuation of the argument you had just before your secret marriage. She is the idealist, arguing for the truth of the heart. You are the pragmatist, arguing for a solution that manages the problem, in this case, the problem of her inconvenient, undying love. Eventually, there is a shift. Perhaps you realize your cold, theological approach is failing. or perhaps her persistence finally breaks through your defenses. Your later letters become warmer, more personal. You begin to acknowledge her pain. You write for her a brief history of famous learned women. You compose hymns for her nuns to sing. You create a rule of life specifically for her convent. You cannot give her the romantic love she craves, but you can give her what you have left to give your mind. You are learning your guidance as a spiritual father. The passion is transformed. The fire of your earthly love is banked and redirected into a new kind of partnership. You can no longer be lovers. You can no longer be husband and wife, but you can be collaborators in the founding of a great religious institution. You can be spiritual soulmates. The years spool out, measured not in stolen moments but in the slow, steady rhythm of prayer and scholarship. The peace you found is a fragile one, a truce with the world, but it holds. You and Héloïse, separated by convent walls but connected by the gossamer threads of your letters, have become a different kind of legend. You are no longer the scandalous lovers that the wise abbot and the revered abbess. Your shared past, a quiet, foundational stone upon which you have both built new life. But you are still Peter Abelard. The fire of your intellect has not been quenched, and as you reach old age, you find yourself facing your final and greatest adversary. He is not a vengeful uncle with a knife, but a man of immense power and unshakable faith, Bernard of Clairvaux. Bernard is everything you are not. Where you are a man of logic, of questions, of doubt, he is a man of pure, incandescent faith. He sees your method of sic et non, your relentless questioning of sacred texts, not as a path to truth, but as a corrosive acid eating away at the foundations of the church. To him, you are not just wrong, you are dangerous. He decides you must be stopped. He orchestrates your condemnation. You are summoned to a great council at Sens in the year 1140th. It is to be the ultimate showdown. Abelard, the champion of reason, versus Bernard, the champion of faith. Your students flock to the city, expecting a magnificent intellectual battle, a final glorious debate. But you are an old man now. You are tired. The fire is still there, but the fight has gone out of you. You arrive at the council and see the assembly of bishops and abbots, their faces already set against you. You see Bernard radiating a certainty you have never known. And you realize this is not a debate, it is a trial. You are not here to argue, you are here to be condemned. In a move that stuns everyone, you refuse to speak. You refuse to defend yourself. As the charges against you are read, you simply turn and walk away. You appeal your case to the Pope in Rome and begin the long journey, a final act of defiance. But your health fails you on the road. You are a broken man. A kind and sympathetic abbot, Peter the Venerable of Cluny, gives you refuge. He shelters you, cares for you, and even works to reconcile you with Bernard and the Pope. In the quiet priory of Street Marcel, you find your final peace. The battles are over. In the spring of 1142, surrounded by monks who respect your mind and pity your suffering, you let go. The news of your death reaches Héloïse at the Paraclete. She, now a powerful and respected abbess in her own right, acts with quiet determination. She writes to Peter the Venerable and makes a request. She wants your body. She wants you to be brought home to the sanctuary you founded, the refuge you gave her. Peter the Venerable, moved by her plea, agrees. Your body is brought to the Paraclete and interred in a crypt. For 22 more years, Héloïse lives on, governing her convent with wisdom and grace, the guardian of your final resting place and your intellectual legacy. When she dies in 1164, an old woman full of years and honor, her final wish is to be buried beside you. And here a beautiful legend is born, a story told by the chroniclers that perfectly encapsulates the myth your lives have become. As they open your tomb to lay her body within, it is said that your corpse, dead for over 2 decades, lifts its skeletal arms and opens them wide to receive her, embracing her in death as you could not in the final years of your life. It is, of course, a legend, but it speaks to the enduring power of your story. And this leads to the last great question that historians still debate the letters themselves. Are they real? For centuries no one doubted them. But in the 20th century, some scholars began to question their authenticity. Is the Historia Columnitatum a genuine letter, or a brilliant piece of fiction, are Héloïse assessed passionate replies truly from her pen, or were they perhaps written by you? A literary exercise to create a dialogue and complete your own narrative the debate rages on, with most scholars today believing they are genuine. But the question mark remains, adding another layer of mystery to your legend. Real or not, the story took hold. Your shared tomb at the Paraclete became a shrine. After being moved several times during the turmoil of the French Revolution, your remains were finally brought to the famous Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris, where they lie today in a grand Gothic tomb, a place of pilgrimage for lovers and thinkers from all over the world, a final, stony testament to the philosopher and his student, a love affair so powerful it carved its own indelible chapter into the pages of history. And now the story fades. The echoes of their voices, one arguing for reason, the other for the heart, grow soft and distant. Let the image of their stone tomb in Paris dissolve, the sharp edges of history softening into the gentle blur of approaching sleep. The great intellectual battles and the raw, passionate heartbreaks of their lives have settled now, like dust motes in a quiet cathedral, visible only in the last rays of a setting sun. You can feel the weight of their story begin to lift, replaced by the simple, comforting weight of your own blanket. The hum of the fan, or the quiet hum of the night outside your window, takes over from the murmur of the narrative. Their world of cold stone, flickering candlelight, and rustling parchment gives way to the familiar landscape of your own room. The cool touch of the pillow. Their joys and their sorrows have been told, and now they drift back into the past, becoming just one of countless stories that murmur on the edge of our dreams. Think of their love not as a tragedy, but as a single stubborn flame that refused to be extinguished by shame or by sorrow. And as you feel your own thoughts begin to slow, to stretch, to unwind, let that flame become a gentle, warm ember, a point of light to guide you into the quiet dark. The journey is over. The mind can be still. All that is left is the soft descent into rest. The end of the article. Good night.